Kicking things off is the reintroduction to Zane's mighty machines, Cyber Dragons. It's been so many years and they finally got the power boost that they needed. Cyber Dragon Revolution is a 2014 structure deck that mainly gave us the Cyber Dragons you see today, like Core and Repair Plant. Not to mention the ace of the deck, Cyber Dragon Nova. All in all, the new support here was needed for a beloved archetype, yes, but what sets it apart from other fan service structure decks is the fact that Nova is the card that makes Infinity amazing and so easy to go into, being Galaxy Soldier and another card. Yes, Infinity isn't in the structure deck, or else it would shoot up on the list, but it's still facilitated by an amazing card in Nova, which is just good in its own right. Not to mention powerful spells and traps in the needed reprint slot, like Super Poly, Limiter Removal, Mystical Space Typhoon, Different Dimension Reincarnation, and even Call of the Haunted and Trap Stun, which are always cards that one might want to hold on to, even if they're not optimal for the format that you get them in. Though it's only number 10, given that this was before Infinity decided to descend from high heaven and deliver his graceful hand of negation. If this had Infinity, oh boy, that would have just been annoying and way ahead of its time, lord. Up next is another influential deck that gave players a boost to a tried and true deck that never truly dies. I mean, till Snow was hit, but it'll come back soon, I'm sure it will. Realm of Light is the Lightsworn structure deck, and gives plenty of useful tools. From Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn being added in as a good way to mill on your own turn in a way that's actually meaningful, to Michael being a synchro the deck never knew it needed, to be a really good piece of spot removal and a powerhouse of attack for being a level 7, as well as various Lightsworn reprints, like Honest, which is, still pretty rare and still a great card to have in light decks, Foolish Burial, as well as Breakthrough Skill, which was still seeing a good amount of play at the time and was a good use of your milling strategy. The deck holds itself together with 2 of the 3 new cards being wonderful additions, and mainstays for years to come, the third being Sanctuary, and no one really plays this card unless they literally just bought one of the deck. All in all, one of my favorite decks to play straight out of the box, and one that impacted the meta pretty well going into formats that had Back Grass and Infernoids. Number 8 is the unholy deck that gave us Danger Fodder, Dark Worlds. Gates of the Underworld is amazing, given that it was the set that 2 incredibly good Dark Worlds came out of. Grapha and Snow. Yeah, crazy to think that Dark Worlds existed before them, huh? You just kinda use draw power generically and Brawn as a discarder to just pop a spell or trap, maybe? They were weird times. With these 2, however, you could search, pop, summon, do whatever you wanted. Also along for the ride is Dark World Dealings, Allure of Darkness, Terraforming, Card Destruction back when it was still legal and also still meant a lot to the game. And these are all cards that people still use today, and the cards that make this deck so expensive to get on the secondary market. Gates really introduced the game to a scumbag deck that no one except the people who played it like, but you cannot understate how much it did to influence the meta it came out in, and meta shortly after. Even without considering it, this was how most players got budget copies of Allure of Darkness, because the price was still through the roof at the time because of Dark Arm Dragon decks and Blackwings beefing it up for years after meta relevancy. A deck you could play with or scrap for parts to make any deck you actually wanted to play so much better and budget-friendly. What's not to love? Oh right, the fact that it's Dark Worlds. Well, we can't all be perfect. You ever needed a quick and easy way to make Chaos Dragons for little to no cost with great added reprints? Then that would belong to Dragons Collide, the structure deck that gave us Light Pulsar, Dark Flare Dragon, and Eclipse Wyvern as original cards that make Chaos Dragons the bane to the meta they were in for years after. And many other cards in the reprint slots like Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, Dark Arm Dragon, Summoner Monk, Call of the Haunted, Monster Gate, and Reasoning. Wow, Infernoids really love this deck more than Dragons Collide players, don't they? The competition is getting pretty steep, and this structure deck was a must-have back in the day for being incredibly fun and powerful, considering one of their main playmakers was Future Fusion, because it was still around in pre-errata state, and waiting 2 turns for 5-headed dragon was something you could afford to do because you're milling 5 graveyard-loving dragons to do it. You might win before the big boss even comes out, and that's where the true power in this deck lies. The graveyard was almost a second hand, allowing you to summon monsters unfairly easy for how much attack they had, and the cover cards themselves could reborn your other huge dragons, like Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon before it was limited, so you could revive one into another and blow out your opponent quite easily. Raw power was this deck's strong suit, and no one did better at the time, as you can see from the ban list hits coming soon after. Coming in at number 6 was the revitalization of Heroes into the trading card game, and the birth of Annoyance Incarnate at the time. Heroes Strike was a Jaden structure deck that gave us Shadow Mist in a wonderful searcher for an archetype that still didn't have Stratos back yet, Dark Law in a wonderful control tool that was not only a one-sided Macrocosmos, but also a strict counter to decks that loved searching, like Traptrix engines and the such, and Mass Change 2 being a great way to splash the aforementioned Dark Law into anything that played Dark Monsters, which was most decks. In general, all you need for a standard Zexal hero deck was reprinted, like Bubble Man, Summoner Monk, Reinforcement of the Army, and many other just good generic cards. Of course, the best thing of this deck is Dark Law and Shadow Mist, given those two alone gave the revitalization of the deck into relevancy. Making sure that Shadow Mist wasn't just a normal dark hero monster for the sake of making the boss, and giving it real effects that synergize with the deck's best cards, like Mask Change and A Hero Lives, was what really made this deck rise up in popularity. It wasn't just the equivalent of Rubik to Burning Abyss. This was certainly one of those decks that you could do well with just from buying 3 of the product and maxing out on all the good cards, but there were still ways to expand and stun the opponents even further with cards like Fiendish Chain. All in all, the deck made its impact and proves that even decks that get infinite amounts of support can still surprise people. Or at least that's what I tell myself, waiting for Blackwings to be relevant again. Well, we're halfway through the list, so I see that many of you are interested in what I have to say, or at least in the idea of talking about anime cards. If this holds true to you, why not like the video and subscribe to the JC Gato channel? The comments are nice, the community we have on Discord is great, and we have ramen! This probably broke college student wants ramen, and hey, you can get like 400 packets for $1 and whatever you can find in your shoe, so why not? What, you're wondering if I accidentally repeated the last one from the last video? No, I just know the struggle of a college kid, and trust me, I want to help you. I am a benevolent soul. Hopefully you like today's tweet, and if you don't, comment down below what you would like tomorrow. Y'all may like my videos a lot, and y'all may click like a lot, but have you ever thought of giving this video 600 likes? I just want to make sure that the real-life lists are doing well, and I just kind of want to use this as a gauge to see if I should go back to just talking about anime cards exclusively, or if you guys would be interested in a lot more of these top 10 lists that, you know, cover the real game, because I have quite a few in the works right now. We can do this, and trust me, I'm excited to see it. Thank you all so much for being fans of JC Gato, and just know that it's an important part of my happiness. Like, subscribe, and enjoy the rest of the list. So in October of 2016, the TCG was given a pair of structure decks that, without certain cards in them, were not relevant given they were mashes of Kaiba and Yugi cards that everyone has seen even as recently as the Reloaded series, which would be on my worst list if they had the decency to call themselves structure decks and not character starter decks. Otherwise, Structure Deck Yu-Gi-Moto was not that good, even with the new cards given it was themed around Magnet Warriors, which more seemed to be in on a joke than actually trying to be good. However, in the ever-apparent cosm of logic aside from the anime, Seto Kaiba reigns supreme with a single kind of... Okay, you get where this is going. It's ABC. Without the introduction of A Assault Core, B Buster Drake, and C Crush Wyvern, who I only pronounce as Assault Core, Buster Drake, and Crush Wyvern, because I find it really funny that I like to imagine their names are stuttering. With their annoying fusion in ABC Dragon Buster and Field Spell Union Hanger, all of which combined into a Contact Fusion Quick Effect Popper that could just dip if it were to die, making you go plus off the great effects of the pieces. This deck would have probably been placed on one of the worst lists. Aside from that, it does give Fiendish Chain and Limiter Removal, which is pretty good, but, I mean, ABCs are the main focus, and we all know how good they were for years to come. Those of you who have never faced ABC before, bless your soul, because the deck alone is a nightmare to work against unless you have the right counters, which usually came in Game 2, because are you really gonna main deck System Down out of fear? This deck isn't the best right out of the box, but it's made one of the best decks ever, so that alone places this quite high on the list. Now we enter the territory of structure decks you buy solely to win against the opponent with nothing on the mind except mindless victory, paradoxically. Dino Smasher's Fury is our first venture into the Structure Deck R series, which are revamped versions of old structure decks for the modern era with retrained versions of the previous boss monsters that can be hit or miss at times. Is everyone saying I can't use that phrase because of a garbage, dead TikTok meme? I appeal to you by asking you to grow up, please. I want to use these phrases. Such examples include the recent Endymion structure deck, which only isn't on the list because I feel it's too recent to count compared to the years we've had to look back on all the other decks, the Lair of Darkness structure deck, and a certain other deck we will mention soon. Fury, over here, was also part of its own double structure deck set as a gimmick with Machine Reactor, which gifted us with the Ancient Gear support that only became meta in Duel Links, but boy did they wreck shop there for like a year. Anyway, so Dino Smasher's Fury is the revamped Dinosaur's Rage, the Superconductor Tyranno structure deck, which I'm actually quite fond of because Tyranno Infinity had a lot of attack, and 8-year-old me was all about that. As such, we get some amazing cards for the average Dino enthusiast. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno being the boss monster the deck never knew it needed, with a Book of Moon effect crossed with a Raigeki that burns on attack, basically. Soul Eating Oviraptor, Miscellaneousaurus, glad you're back at 3, buddy. Lost World, which has really come into relevance recently with the recent unlimiting of Miscellaneousaurus. Rescue Rabbit for Dino Rabbit sets, which is a nice reprint if a little late to be entirely meta. Alongside Fossil Dig, Twin Twisters, Terraforming, and even Quaking Mirror Force, which was the best attributable Mirror Force until Lynx happened and kinda just said, oh wait, defense mode, what's that? This deck also got a lot better as time went on, thanks to Overtex, Double Evolution Pill, and the introduction of True King Dino Yang Zings, also known as TKDYZ. A deck that had half the deck hit and still tried working like they learned how to quit from Infernities. The answer being, no, you are always relevant, keep going. The structure deck was the definition of canned meta. Still, if you were to ever pick this up, it's still relevant today with quite a few really good cards. So it's not a bad purchase alongside the fact that the deck is still fun as hell, and only has very few dud cards from what the structure deck was trying to achieve. Number 3 is the structure deck that turned a joke of a deck at the time from meh to meta. Structure Deck Soulburner was the catalyst that made Salamangreats a force to be reckoned with on the world thanks to giving them literally everything they could have wanted. I know this one's recent, but it's less recent than the Endymion Structure Deck, and also, we just know this thing made meta. It's kind of still relevant today. I think we're pretty good on saying this is a good structure deck. From Gazelle to Spinny to Mirage Stalio, Ash Blossom being a card that almost pays for the MSRP of the entire structure deck, their own Rhoda spell on top of there being Lady Debug and Cynet Mining, Salamangreat Steeds, also known as Salamangreat Rage, a counter trap for negations. This had a ton of cards. The only thing it really didn't have, though, was Sunlight Wolf, which is a key card, so yeah, go on ahead and buy 3 copies of that $10 rare, why don't you? If you want to buy the structure deck for the sake of making Salamangreat, then make sure you set aside a lot of funding for buying Wolf singles or plenty of Soul Fusion packs. Who knows, you may get Thunder Dragons too if you really like. You can also get that money through reselling singles from the structure deck, and people are more than willing to pay top dollar for spare Ash Blossoms, so this is possibly one of the best money-making ventures in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. It's meta out of the box with only rares to really supplement it. You can't ask for much more. As for the other structure deck R to make this list, it would be a shame to not include it. Emperor of Darkness is the first structure deck R made, and it's a revamp of the Monarch structure deck called the Dark Emperor, with its introduction to Caius into the game. That deck would have made it on this list if I didn't feel that Nova was a better long-term inclusion to consider, along with the other new cards that made Cyber Dragons quite easy and wonderful to play for a long time. So, call Dark Emperor number 11 for just being solid and making Caius a thing. That thing being fear in the opponent when you tribute, target Caius for its effect, and end the game with the dumbest smirk on your face. It's like Cowboy, but just a lot more sad. What did the revamp give us? Oh, nothing much, just 3 legitimate structure decks equaling the meta. Erebus, Aether, Eidos, Idea, all 6 main monarchs and their vassals, Dandelion, Pantheism, Domain of the True Monarchs. Just in general, an amazing load of cards that cemented its status as meta since release, all thanks to Domain Monarchs and the general oppression involved. This structure deck gave you Soul Charge, for God's sake! And this was back when it was not only legal, but still pretty expensive. And even with Monarchs having lost their luster over time with the hit to their main draw in Pantheism and also the fact they can't be used in Chicken Game FTK, yeah, that's something we actually need to respond to in this. Some of these cards still just work on True Dragons, like the Cancerous Tumor, the Monarchs Erupt. Just wow, what could top that? Well, while Monarchs were great and all, they didn't win Worlds. That's kind of an end-all be-all, all things considered, considering the best deck in the world can't really be surpassed. Make room for the number 1 entry, Lost Sanctuary. One word, Agents. Hyperion comes out way too easily and pops whatever you want. Earth is a great searcher that was pretty ahead of its time for searching out not only agents that you wanted to bring into your hand, but also your boss monster that was actually worth playing. Venus spamming out infinite, well, 3, but infinite Shine Balls to spam the board for Gotchi Gotchi and the buffs for free. Honest just being very generically good, Terraforming Valhalla, Torrential and Solemn Judgment because they were legal, and still crazy cards back in the day that see relevance still to this day. Just wow! The only complaint I could have here is that there wasn't an extra deck, but that's such a small nitpick considering most structure decks even today don't have an extensive extra deck, and this one came at a time when that almost never happened. You just sort of slammed in good synchros and Xyz and called it a day, making this one of the easiest decks to upgrade. You just kind of put in the extra deck of whatever you were playing before, add in an Ancient Sacred Wyvern or something, and a gotchi, and bam, you got it. If your deck costs $30 and could win Worlds for a small upcharge, I would think that's the best structure deck ever made.